I use it as a very practical art. I call it a scientific art, a sci-art, because it does provide the knowledge through this artistic form of that creativity that we all have, I think, but we probably don't apply it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I think anyone can do it, but you've got to be totally devoted to it.
Hello, and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. Today, we're joined by author Christopher Freeland for a captivating journey into the hidden world of Ireland's mysterious round towers and the ancient art of dowsing. A seasoned practitioner of radiesthesia, Christopher reveals his unique approach to dowsing as a technique to access what he terms the collective consciousness, drawing on his experiences as a monk in India and his extensive body of research. This episode challenges conventional historical narratives, as Christopher posits that the enigmatic round towers of Ireland weren't simply defensive structures designed to thwart rampaging Vikings, but actually sophisticated ancient technologies designed to harness natural energies, most specifically to harness the point where waters cross. I was fascinated to learn all about Christopher's groundbreaking research into the magnetic properties of these stone structures and how they were used to create abundance of both water and agricultural resources. Now, this show I think will be of special interest to those who've been following the pendulum course on the Spirit Box Patreon, as Christopher very kindly shares his viewpoint, some of his techniques on using his pendulum, which he has been doing for many years. And in the Plus show, we get further into the practicalities of pendulum dowsing, but Christopher also explains how it marries into his work in spirit release. And in particular, he shows us his universal pendulum, which is a device I was not familiar with, and it's absolutely fascinating. Really kind of, you're better off watching the video version to see this on the Plus show. But if you're listening, you can check out links to basically all the themes that we discussed today below, and including where you can pick up Christopher's fascinating book on the mysteries of the Irish Round Towers. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in and you want to hear the Plus show, simply come and join the Patreon, and you can access not only the Plus show for this episode, but indeed an entire 5 years worth of Plus shows, bonus shows, heaps and heaps of stuff, and the aforementioned pendulum course. There's also another podcast there called Nameless, hosted by myself and Tommy Kelly. Alternatively, if that's not something you'd like to do, and you'd like to still like to support me, then you can always pick up a copy of my book, Song of the Dark Man, Father of Witches, from Inner Traditions, the link to which you can find also in the show notes. Okay, let's get on with the show. So, Christopher Freeland, you're most welcome to the Spirit Box. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Wonderful. So, I've just been going through your book on the mysteries of the Round Towers in Ireland. You can see that there. Yeah. Super interesting, and kind of a subject matter that's close to my heart. Being, as we were just chatting before we hit record, I know a lot of the areas and indeed the round towers that you document in the book. I suppose to get the show on the road, because I know you do many other things. Could you tell the people a little bit about yourself and your work?
I think the interesting bits about me would be that I'm a radiesthesist, a dowser. Now, obviously, this is pretty spooky stuff for many, but I have a quite firm conviction that if everything is one, there's a connection possible for us in our ignorance, in our unawareness, to be able to access what is true. And that's my approach to dowsing. It's not, oh, look, the pendulum's swinging. What's going on? No, it's a question of using my intellectual capacity to formulate the questions, and then those questions are referred to what I call the all-conscious. I think we're very rude, as you know. It was what a 19th century British philosopher who gave the rather derogatory term of the unconscious. Well, it's not unconscious. It's us who is unconscious. Whatever it is that's there is very aware of everything that's going on, but we have to access it. And then, of course, Jung, with his collective subconscious. Well, yes, it is subconscious until such time that you bring it up to the surface. And you're only going to be able to do that with a combined effort of asking from a rational point of view, there's something going on, I'd really like to find out. Can you please help? So it's a cooperative effort. And that's been my work for quite a number of years, about 20 odd years now. I was a monk in India for 4 years. Wow. And that was very much an introduction to an alternative existence, an alternative reality. And that was the beginning of the end. Right. So, but I'm still here.
Fantastic. And where were you a monk?
Well, I met my preceptor in Africa. I was his guide. I was working on photographic safaris in Zambia.
Right.
He came out for a walkabout of a week on safari, and I was so impressed with his extraordinary contentment. I said, I want some of that. And we hit it off like a house on fire with his young sponsors, a young Indian couple. I stayed with him, studied with him for 18 months. We were moving between Zambia, Kenya, Rhodesia at the time, and India. Right. And then he kicked me out. He said, go on, you've got to push off, go do it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I was mainly in Gujarat, Western India, and Hardwar, up in the mountains, or at least where the Ganges comes out of the mountains into the plain.
Yeah, lovely. No, I spent a lot of time in India over the years.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, primarily in the north, but Himachal Pradesh, and kind of
magnificent.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And Rajasthan quite a bit, and Uttar Pradesh as well.
So. Did you go up to MacLeod Ganj, to Dharmashala?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I spent about I think just over a week. Was there? Yeah. It was a beautiful place. Beautiful place.
It is.
Yeah, really, really lovely. Yeah.
Well, they chose the best spot, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful place, and kind of went around over the years, like Manali and kind of all around. Wonderful places. I'm especially thrilled to have you on the show because you document so much pendulum work in your book. Now, at the moment, in the online group that support this podcast, I've been pulling together kind of a course in pendulum use. So I've been using pendulum since I was about 13, and I find it an extraordinarily great tool for dowsing, for divination, and what have you. And what I really enjoyed about your work is I thought it was a perfect example of, because people think it's a very simple tool, and it is, but it's also as complicated and as advanced and as sophisticated as you want it to be. And you touched on it there in your intro with kind of talking about the type of questions you ask it. And I noted in the book how you pose questions to the pendulum is very sophisticated in what you're able to elicit from it. If we could talk to that a bit, that would be great.
When, funnily enough, this last year and a half out here in Thailand, I've sort of been living in isolation. I've left my family behind in West Cork because the house got destroyed by the tenant who was here. So I came out to repair it. And I've been keeping really busy. They're all finished, at least not all finished. There's still 3 to remain to be completed. I've been working on different aspects of dowsing. So a foundation course, what I call Who Are You? I want to find out who am I dealing with.
Right.
And with a pendulum, you can nail it. Is it a psychopath? Is it a narcissist? Is it someone very decent, well-intentioned? Medical dowsing, which we shouldn't be talking about because you're not meant to do that. But it is quite extraordinary, especially when and I've had the very useful background of Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine.
Right.
So you can relate to that. And I think this is, we're inclined to forget with the dowsing that it's a tool, but you have to apply it according to what you understand, what you know. And then you can start discovering stuff,
right,
not only because of your curiosity, but because of your education. And this is what's so fascinating, because there's no limit.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you demonstrate that very very robustly in your book, in terms of what you can elicit from the stone. And yes. I suppose it's probably worth it's before we get into the kind of the round tower stuff. It'd be really great to kind of get your thoughts on, like, for those people who are, say, very unfamiliar with pendulum work, with dowsing, like, how would you describe it? You know, is it something that everybody can do, or are there limitations? How, what would be the best framing, do you think?
I personally think everyone can do it, but there is a very, very serious limitation. You've got to practice, 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 and yet more practice. 3 hours a day for 2 years.
Right.
Before I had the confidence to be able to say, I'm pretty certain this is what the answer is.
Right, okay.
So, for example, I would take 16 playing cards. In there was the 3 of hearts, for example. Put them on the table. Lay them down, face down on the table. I would ask with the pendulum, I'm looking for the 3 of hearts. Please tell me where it is. Okay, over here. Is this it? That's it. Turn it up. Ah, good. 3 of hearts. 10 times out of 10.
Right.
I don't get my knickers in a twist. I get things wrong. I make mistakes. I probably still make mistakes, but there's a reason for making the mistake. And that's what you can discover with all of that practice.
Right.
So one has to be very methodical. So it's, and for example, this is a chart that I use, I've got lots of information, uh, for discovering geopathic stress.
Hmm.
Uh, what is it that's causing it? The color scheme, external physical color, internal physical color, and then traditional Chinese medicine, the reasons for issues. So, using a chart, you've got a whole stack of information. You'll find this on my website if you would like.
Right.
Or I'd be happy to send you a copy of it. But I use masses of different charts. If I'm looking for homeopathics, if I'm looking for back remedies, if I'm looking for the stones, is it a lunar observation? Is it a stellar observation? Is it for ritual work? Is it for healing? So, you put this stuff down on a piece of paper, and then rather than asking lots of questions in series, you can get an answer and narrow down
Hmm.
the whole performance. It's and I use it as a very practical art. I call it a scientific art, a sci art, because it does provide the knowledge through this artistic form of that creativity that we all have, I think, but we probably don't apply it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, I think anyone can do it, but you've got to be um, totally devoted to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would kind of marry up with my thoughts on it. I think it's being methodical and and systematic in your approach.
Yeah.
I don't use charts for it, but I don't do the same type of work as you do, so I don't have that need. Um,
Yes.
um, and I certainly kind of where the kind of the situation to arise where it would be benefit. I've no hesitation in using it. So I'll definitely check out your chart. I think it'd be really useful to see. But yeah, I think it is that methodical approach and practice and blind tests. One thing that I've said to people, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this one, is that initial kind of practice phase is better off done alone, because yeah, it can really go.
Oh, definitely. And I strongly recommend, even when you're an accomplished dowser,
Yeah,
not to ask in public.
yeah.
I think we've all met people who can make the pendulum go the other way, and then you're in trouble.
Yep, I know someone very close to me who has can do that. Yes. Yeah.
I'm well aware.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And I think it's yeah, super useful context for what we're going to get into around the approach you've taken to your study on the round towers and as to their true nature. In the start of the book, you talk to how decoupling the kind of the Christian heritage as it's perceived of the round towers and make the case for there being other aspects for it. I mean, you quite rightly point out that there's a number of kind of anomalous things about them. You know, I mean, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, the standard interpretation of the round towers was for protection against Viking raids, where the valuables of the monastery were taken up into the round tower and then the ladder pulled up after them. Now, I remember being 10 or 11 going, but the Vikings were like really accomplished navigators and shipbuilders. Like they couldn't figure out how to get 20 feet, to a door. Like, this doesn't seem to add up. So it's just kind of they can build in the most sophisticated ship of the era, but can't make a ladder. So,
Uh, us Catholics, we had it all down.
but so you start kind of like building the argument of decoupling the round towers from being this kind of relic of the kind of the era of early Christianity in Ireland. Could you talk to that?
It's a rather sensitive subject for many. I'm not Catholic. I have great admiration for the traditional Catholic process. So I'm not slamming them,
Sure.
but I found it so incredibly disappointing that all of the books on the Round Towers, all of them, without exception, except Thomas Sheridan, all of them fell back onto the mainstream belief that it was the church. Now, when you sort of go back into, as I did, into the sort of relatively recent, 200, 300-year-old literature, there were one or two people who were questioning this narrative. And it just doesn't hold water. Because if we went back to the time of St. Patrick, it's normal enough that when you come proselytizing, trying to convince a bunch of hairy-assed heathens, whether they're druids or whatever, you're better not tell them that this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you've got to do. You're going to, if you find that there's a really strongly held belief, it would be good human psychology to say, okay, guys, now, what's this for? Oh, okay. Well, what do? You start incorporating it into your belief system, right, so that over a generation or 5, people start thinking, it's all part of this new belief system. And they will accept it. They will accept without questioning much more easily. And I don't go into this in detail, into this sort of psychological aspect in the book, because it's off subject. However, they really shoot themselves in the foot when you see the ecclesiastic buildings planted around the towers. It's quite impossible to say which came first.
Sure.
But if the church doesn't say, this is what we were doing, there's every reason to question what was going on. Even today, when you stand near a round tower in Ireland or in Scotland, there's a feeling of peace, of completion. And, there's still farmers in Ireland who'll tell you, the grazing's grand. So they recognize that the health of the local agriculture is better.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was it. Maybe there was a feeling of well-being, mm-hmm, which of course the church would want to take hold of, and bring it into its fold, especially if you can't explain it. And I think it is quite easy to explain, when you start looking at other traditions around the world, feng shui with the black Shah, with a crossing of underground water being the most dangerous for people. Well, why do you build a round tower over the crossing of underground water? Because you can transform it, I believe.
Right.
And I think this is what the ancients, in all of their wisdom, knew and were actually doing. Why in Ireland? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were elsewhere. But as you know, the density of archaeological remains, stones, wells, towers, is pretty extreme in Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's been relatively untouched.
Which is wonderful. And there has been quite a lot of destruction, especially in the last 100 years. I know, get rid of that stone structure. In any case, I can use that to build my barn.
Yes. Yeah.
So damage has been done.
Yeah, it has. But you touch on the reasons as to why things have been preserved so well, and it hints to me to kind of like a dual belief, not necessarily an active practice, but a dual belief within the kind of Gaelic culture of while being very much Christian country, there was a respect for the archaic and what was there before, and often a supernatural taboo that was associated with certain things, or a respectful distance associated with certain things, like, you know, fairy trees and all that kind of thing, and
respect for nature.
Yes, very much so, very much so. So within the round towers, you discuss how there's a kind of a number of unique features to them, like things like double walls, the height of the entrance from the ground, and then the location that you mentioned, the kind of the crossing water generally under the site. And you mentioned in the book that Ireland is an interesting country, isn't that? Like, you know, water is everywhere, you know, which is very true. I mean, we essentially, it's an archipelago of you know, small pieces of land.
In the midst of the wet.
Yes, exactly. And I read recently as well that actually beneath Connacht they reckon is one of the largest cave complexes in the world, which is water filled, you know, and you know, which certainly lends credence to things like, I mean, we mentioned Mayo before we hit recording, but there's a lovely proliferation of round towers right around the area of I think it's Lough Conn and Lough Mask, where they kind of intersect. There's quite a few. And Ahergower is
yeah.
And there was a well there that was a pilgrimage route between Ballintubber Abbey on the way to Crowpatrick. So I think it was called Toher Padraig was that, but there was a well there, and there was a series of wells. There was a well at Ballintubber where people would kind of bathe their feet, and then before they started their pilgrimage, and do it kind of at these points of springs. Yeah.
Which, you know, we've obviously lost the significance of that Gaelic tradition. I imagine it was a Gaelic tradition, the importance of water. But it's so extraordinary that we should, or that the towers should have been built over this conjunction of water passages. And Schauberger, Victor Schauberger, was the person who pointed me in this direction. Magnetism coming from simple stones can draw up water. And he actually dismantled the stone structure over a spring high in the mountains in Austria, and the spring dried up.
Wow.
He reconstructed the stone structure, not knowing what he was doing, but he was a methodical man. He numbered the stones, and he made sure that the stones were facing up the way that they had done originally. And lo and behold, the water came back up again. So we've had this experience, which not many people would pay any attention to, but I think it is very, very pertinent, because water is one thing, but good quality water is something else.
Sure. So can you tell us a little bit, I know you did a lot of experiments to determine, if I understand correctly, like the negative and positive magnetic forces within stone. I think you did an experiment in Wat Umong in Chiang Mai.
That's right. There was an acquaintance who was living in Wat Umong, and we became friends. I was teaching at the Buddhist University down here, down the way, and we discovered that we had lots of interests in common. And he came and spent quite a few days here at home, and we were playing in the garden, using rocks that we had picked up. We had permission from the abbot of Wat Umong to take the stones, and then started laying them out in very precise geometric patterns, circles, squares, using pi, using angles of various sorts. And it was quite impressive, the power that seemed to be generated by something as simple as a nice round river rock.
Right.
And geometry. And I think this is something that we overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And the ancients, we only have to look at some of the monuments that they've left behind. They obviously knew an awful lot about mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
geometry, and how to put it together and apply it.
Yeah. And what about the material itself? So obviously, like, you've got various different types of stones of different qualities, some crystalline, limestone being very porous, that kind of thing. Have you found? I mean, I think did you mention that the round towers? What's the preeminent stone they're built in?
Sandstone.
Right.
Sandstone is the predominant material used. Granite.
Right.
Which obviously is not a very convenient stone.
No, it's a dreadful stone to work with. It's so dense. Yeah.
Yes.
I built many a loose stone wall in Galway with the stuff. Limestone's a hell of a lot easier.
Yes, limestone is definitely the easiest, but sandstone again is a common material used in the towers. And this is what is so fascinating, and I think almost comparable to the construction of Cheops's pyramid. How did they facet those stones? Because in just about every tower, the stones are worked. You've got 5 meters diameter, I think about sort of 16, 18 circumference. So you've got a rounded stone.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it. They faceted the stones inside and out, because in Agagar you can get into the
That's
tower.
right, yeah.
And that's where I was able to check the magnetic polarity of the inside walls and take a reading even though the tower has been severely damaged, but you're still getting this effect of a very strong magnetic force reading.
Right. And did you find? I mean, because you've extensively gone to so many round towers. You've got a map in the book, and you've got your kind of your readings of county by county, all the round towers, which is fantastic, by the way. Like, for anybody who's interested in visiting round towers, what a fabulous resource to have. But did you find that was consistent? Where, did a pattern emerge that kind of gave you like a grounding?
That's a very interesting question, which I wouldn't be able to answer unless I spent probably a full year at each tower.
Right.
The planetary conjunction, the moon, time of day, these things change.
Mm-hmm.
Not very much, but they do change. So I wouldn't be able to give a precise answer. So I think it's sort of a generalization to say that you find an energetic reading of 55 from this particular tower.
Right.
But nevertheless, the 55, for example, is a much stronger reading than your average, very beneficial environment of plus 20. So again, this is, how reliable is this?
Yeah.
Philip Callahan had a wonderful instrument which would probably be easy enough to make. I haven't tried to reproduce that because I have confidence in the pendulum and the reading I'm getting from with the pendulum, the chart. But it would be much more convincing if there was an instrument which you could go and take. Oh, look, here we go. We've got a reading. So it's there's a lot going on. If you consider the crossing of underground water, now it's obviously you would be able. I know it's a lot more work that could be done. How deep are those subterranean passages?
Mm-hmm.
And because, as you know from your days of doing physics at school, who says current says magnetic field at 90 degrees to the current. So when you have two currents, you're going to get a very mixed magnetic field.
Right.
Which, and the feng shui people 6,000 years ago knew that that's bad news for people.
Right.
And there was a gent who erected a stone and wrote, "Don't build your house over the crossing of underground water."
Mm.
Well, he was obviously very concerned for his people. Now we've lost that. Maybe 100, perhaps less, in rural communities. A farmer would put the sheep out in the field and watch where they grazed. Where the mare gave birth, that's a great spot. There you're going to feel really comfortable because of the energy coming from the earth is not going to be doing you any harm. But we've lost that. And of course, now space has become so, I wouldn't say valuable, but no attention, except in Germany. they do pay a lot of attention. Before you build a house in Germany, you've got to have someone like me, a Baubiolog, come along and check
Right.
and give you the clearance.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of like there's some interesting taboos that say people who deal with like spirit removal from houses and kind of poltergeist activity and that kind of stuff. Sometimes the source of the problem can be led to crossed waters beneath the house.
I would agree with that 100%. The majority of my work is in spirit clearance.
Yeah.
Clearing spaces, clearing homes, clearing land. And I do believe that the spirits use water as a means of transport.
Oh, fantastic! That's super interesting. No, I've never heard that before. In the kind of in Jinn and fairy lore, we talk about traveling in the wind. But it makes a lot of sense when you think about the association. I mean, that kind of crossed water and the manifestation of trouble in the home is poltergeist-esque. So there must be something going on related to spirit. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, and which comes first?
Yeah,
the gin or the water?
Yeah. Very interesting. And in terms of in terms of the kind of the magnetic field readings that you got in the Round Towers, and you mentioned that around the Round Towers, farmers would say is good grazing. Like, are there, like, I'm assuming, health benefits for human beings? Is that the purpose of the Round Tower in your argument?
This is a very large, open question. And unfortunately, because the church built or planted dead bodies all around the place, around most of the round.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
We no longer have the hands-on experience of the true worth of the agricultural input.
Mm-hmm.
But in areas where they haven't taken over the land to bury their stiffs, you do find that the grazing is extremely high quality. Now, Alana Moore, an Australian dowser, mentioned in one of her books, and she, I even have one over here, you make a round tower with sandpaper.
Right.
And you can modify the growth of your plants.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
So again, you would orient your tar, the opening, the main opening of the so-called doorway. Inevitably, there were maybe 7, 8 openings in various parts of the tar. I think those openings were to release the energy that was collected from inside,
right,
from the double wall, the magnetic drawing power, and then all around the countryside.
Right.
So there was tremendous benefit for agriculture in all of its aspects: plant growth, animal nourishment,
mm-hmm.
and of course us. So given the location, the totally random location of the towers, there's other stuff going on and we don't know what.
Right. Yeah. That's so intriguing.
It is intriguing, isn't it? I mean, it's a very, very deep rabbit hole. I don't know whether, and there's a huge amount of work to be done. But I think that we have to start from somewhere. And if we've got this somewhere of a practical application, then we can probably correlate it with the other stuff that's going on with the stones, with hydrology is not a very precise science, so we don't really know very much where those wells come up. The blind wells, they come up maybe just 1 meter below the surface. How do you find them? Well, you've got to call in a dowser to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the hydrological maps are good, will give indications, but maybe there are instruments which will be able to detect water at a certain depth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned in the book about how there are pyramidic structures in various different places where you wouldn't expect to find them, and one area you mentioned is the pyramid in the pyramid cluster in Bosnia Herzegovina. You mentioned that site, and I've been to that site. I've been to
Have
the
you?
to the what's said to be the main pyramid. I think they call it the Pyramid of the Sun, if I remember correctly. But been
you impressed?
a very interesting site. Very interesting site. Particularly kind of there's the surface area. You have these kind of what they're saying is kind of a version of mortar or cement, right? As these giant slabs on the outside. So really, really interesting. I can't say yes or no as to it. All I'm saying is it's a strange site, and I think it's individuals can make their own mind up. But you mentioned kind of the healing qualities, right? So in the area beneath, there's the pyramid, and then nearby there's what they call the labyrinth, which is some excavation that they've been taking, and there's some very large. I think they call them like ceramic boulders beneath the surface in this labyrinth, and they have used some reading. I can't remember from the top of my head. Let me just bring up. I have a record here. So I visited it when I was doing photographic work,
Mm-hmm.
and I have it here. Okay, so it's Dr. Simir Osmanik. I can't pronounce
Yes.
it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll forgive you your
yes, thank you.
pronunciation. I would do no better.
So excavations beneath the pyramid have revealed a tunnel complex with natural pools that the doctor claims have healing properties due to the high level of negative ions in the area. They've recorded a Schumann resonance of 7.83 hertz under the pyramid, which they claim is conducive to healing. So, kind of,
I've got a feeling it is in the negative ions,
right?
Because there's nothing like walking along the seashore. You'll be able to do that at high tide. That's when the negative ions are at their peak.
Right.
You breathe those in, and that is really going to work wonders on your metabolism.
Okay.
So I've got a feeling this again is an avenue to be explored with the TARS.
Mm-hmm.
The transformation of the quality of the water, especially as it's being pushed out through the openings over the surrounding countryside, which of course you walk in there and take a couple of deep breaths and you feel full of beads and off you go back to work.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you mentioned, like, just as you described it, the towers themselves are kind of acting almost like these kind of like antennas that are radiating out this beneficial
energy.
To the landscape, to the water. It seems to me that this type of understanding of the way stone could do this, or of this understanding of this manipulation of subtle energy, like it hints at either a position that's been obtained through millennia of observation and documentation of effects, as you mentioned, the ewe giving birth in the field, and that being indicating of a particular presence or in that space, or perhaps some sort of mystical knowledge that was able to determine what was going on, perhaps accessing that not so unconscious that we're sharing with everything. What would be your take?
It makes a lot of sense. Where do we start? I mean, I think we do have a little understanding of what the Druids were doing, and that would seem to be working with nature.
Right.
And what is the most manifest demonstration of nature that we can access on a regular basis? Water, stone, and the trees. So you have the basic elements accessible. And as you say, thousands of years of observation have perhaps allowed the ancients to figure it out. When you combine, when you lay out certain components, certain of these elements, here's the result. And instead of imposing, as we do today, the modern human imposes or destroys stuff to extract, you work with what you've got. Although, the towers, they didn't grow by themselves.
Yes, sure.
But you realize, there is a problem caused by the crossing of underground water. And it does kill, because those frequencies, when it comes up to the surface, if you hang out over that in that area, there's a good chance you will get some rather unpleasant disorders.
Right.
And therefore, you must steer clear. But wouldn't it be marvelous if you can switch that, transform that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what they were up to.
Right. That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
It is. It's positively mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. But I think this is where, with a pendulum, with one's intuition and questioning, you're able to discover a rationale behind behind what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. I'd love to be able to chat dowsing, pendulums, and round towers. So what a fabulous array of topics to go through. So thank you very much for coming on the Spirit Box. And if people want to find out more about your work, or indeed pick up a copy of your books, where's the best place for them to do so?
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure and honor to chat with you, Darren. The book will best be found from Inner Traditions, because although it is available on my website, it cost me an arm and a leg to send the damn thing.
Sure, yeah.
As you know, postal charges have gone silly in the last few years. So inner traditions would be the place to order it from, or from Amazon,
Right.
or Barnes and Noble, or any of the big stores.
Yeah.
My work is up there on the website, radiesthesia.online.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a real Pandora's box. There's all sorts of stuff in there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and maybe let's do it again at some stage. That'd be great.
With great pleasure. Let me twist your ear a bit more.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the Spirit Box.
Thank you, Doc.
Wasn't that interesting? I really enjoyed that. There's so much to go through on that one. A lot of books I've been reading of late are pointing towards vast bodies of water under the province of Connacht that are attached to significant volumes of really quite important Irish mythology. There seems to be this vast network of caves, apparently the biggest underwater cave system in certainly Europe is located in that part of the world. So there's definitely something to this in the idea of the water being under these structures. So yeah, really interesting stuff. And those of you who are following the pendulum course, or indeed want to pick up the pendulum course, this might spur you on to come and engage with that collection of content on lesson plans on the Patreon. If you want to know more about that, then just, if you're on the Patreon already, just shoot me a DM. But if you're not, come and join and you can check it out. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'm Darren Mason. You've been listening to Spirit Box. Take care and talk soon. Bye.